Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road. It's the first touch, strong connection. It lays deep in your soul. Feel the kindness strongly coming, 'cause you can achieve your goal.
Hi, this is Nancy Yeareld, and welcome to Nancy's Psychic View on the high road to humanity. And joining me today is Elizabeth Cunningham. She's written this cool book, My Life as a Prayer. And welcome back to the show, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be back.
I'm excited you're here. This is cool. We're going to be talking about prayer today. This is her memoir. This is, a multi-faith memoir, she calls it. And it's really interesting. And it's about her life. And and we're going to talk about prayer too. So it's going to be a fun show. Before we get going, I pulled this up on my phone this morning. I always kind of just, go through and see what's happening. And I saw this headline and I wanted to bring it to people's attention. Panera Bread faces growing allegations over beverage blamed for deaths. Now, I thought this was quite interesting. So this is the second lawsuit has been filed against Panera Bread. And I'm telling you this for informational purposes. A lot of people go out to eat. And they say that this is the second lawsuit filed against Panera, claims Florida man died from a caffeinated charged lemonade. And I didn't know anything about this, but a lawsuit was filed Monday alleging that Panera lemon drink caused the death of a Florida man, Dennis Brown, 46, after he went into cardiac arrest, you guys, when he left the restaurant. According to the lawsuit, Brown consumed a lemonade with his dinner at the Panera Bread near his job in Florida and died while he was walking home. So I'm not going to go into the whole thing. You guys can check it out. But I'm just thinking, what is in this thing? Is it that much caffeine? What do you think about this, Elizabeth? This is kind of crazy, huh?
No, I actually did hear about that a while back, and I didn't realize it was Panera.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I heard about that people were drinking a drink that they were not aware was that caffeinated. That's all I know about it.
Yeah. And there was
Yeah,
a
and
young girl also who died. And it goes on to say she was a student. She was a college student.
wow,
And she went into cardiac arrest.
that's too much caffeine. Maybe it's something else too. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with the details, but
I'm not either, but I'm letting people know, be careful what you put in your body.
yeah.
Just really watch it out there. I'm one of these that I cook a lot because I want to know what's in my food. You guys, Elizabeth's here, and she's a novelist and a poet. She's best known for the Maeve Chronicles, and we had her on the show talking about this. And that's a series of award-winning novels featuring a Celtic Mary Magdalene. The descendant of generations of Episcopal priests, Cunningham grew up in a small upstate New York town next door to her church and an overgrown enchanted wood, and has spent her life writing stories, you guys, traversing the world of scripture and fairy tales. I'm just really excited you're here. And I guess my first question is, you say in the very beginning of the book, I am a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about this. Why
Yeah.
did you write Your Life is a Prayer?
Well, that is how the title actually came to me, one of those little whispers that you might recognize as a communication, Nancy.
Yes.
But I was thinking, like, prayer is so vast, really, as a subject. And there are so many approaches to prayer that and it's unfathomable in some ways. And I'm not an expert, but the one thing that I do know is that if you pray, like if you're a writer, if you write, you are a writer. If you sing, you are a singer. So if you pray, you are a prayer.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really neat. Now, I want to kind of start out in the beginning because you do tell your story throughout the book.
First half tells the story, and the second half is a lot of my own questions about prayer and explorations of it in essay form. I don't know if you got that far, but so
yeah, because I made it to the angel fairy part.
Oh, good. All right, then you're good. You're in.
Oh, yeah. But what I want to start with is, this is kind of shocking, and it may be shocking to the audience, but at age 3, you say you have had it with God and Jesus. Tell your story. Explain what happened.
And I've never, people say, well, why did you feel that way at 3? So I think we have to start with the fact that my father was an Episcopal priest. I don't think he was terribly comfortable being a father, maybe especially not after we were little. And that's a whole long story. And I refer people to my body of work and all my novels if you want to know more about that. But I think there was a point at which I felt, I've never confessed this on air before, I think where I felt my father turned from me and pushed me away, or maybe I thought my father was so busy with God, he didn't have any time for me. I'm sure it was connected to my father.
Yeah.
And when I think about my father and God the Father and my childhood, when I think about that, I do see the church I grew up in. And it was a beautiful church, and it actually had some nice stained glass windows and was lit up during the day, but it looks very dark and cavernous to me. And so there's my father up on the pulpit, because they stood up higher than the congregation back in those days. It's much more friendly now, I think.
Yeah, right. We're on the same level.
Above that. And it's like, so they were very mysterious to me.
Yeah.
Plus, of course, as a child of the 1950s, I guess that would be late 50s. I was born in 53. So by the time I was 3 or 4, I was watching cartoons, probably including Roadrunner.
Yeah.
There was Wile E. Coyote. And
I watched those.
He was always rolling boulders over, trying to squash or someone was trying to squash him. Anyway, there was a boulder, and that
right. No, you're right.
It
The
was a
Roadrunner and the Coyote, and
as far as I knew, the God lived in the desert from all the stories I had heard. So I thought, well, if I'm going to get God, then I could stand on one of those pinnacles and I could push the boulder over. And so God looked to me like a thundercloud, like that darkness hanging out in the church. And Jesus, he kind of floated. And I don't know, I put them together. I didn't have the Holy Ghost. I didn't have the Trinity yet. I thought, I'm going to squash them. But they never stayed squashed, because, things pop back up.
Right. Can I ask you a quick question? I'm
Yeah.
just curious about something. Did no one ever, your father was a priest. Did no one ever sit you down and talk to you about God or Jesus or anything?
No, that's the odd thing. Everything I got, I sort of got by osmosis, because it wasn't, I got a lot by being in the church and listening to the incredibly beautiful, also scary liturgy of the Book of Common Prayer. And I have a whole chapter about that, the kind of language that I heard, which was, really from it was from the time of King James, pretty much. And it was very beautiful. And I think it had a profound effect on me, but nobody really sat me down and talked to me about anything or taught me. In Sunday school, they did.
Right.
And but my father, I do not remember my father talking to me about God. I think that was it was so internal in some sense. The external form was the liturgy, but internally you didn't talk about your personal relationship with God. I know in other churches, people did, but not my father, not his father, probably not his father. So it was an odd combination of being completely steeped in the church and in religion and in tradition, and yet not having a way to speak about it with my father.
Interesting. And your mother, you say, was chronically depressed, you believe?
Yes, she definitely was.
And yeah, it was interesting when you wrote this in the book. You said your mother was constantly serving. She was always cooking. Like, what do you need? And my mom was like that too. I think that was a generational thing.
It was very much so, I think.
Yeah. Like, what can I get for you?
Yeah. Well, I don't think my mother really liked it. I think she felt like my mother was very big on duty and obligation. She didn't really talk about that either.
Right.
But she did what she was supposed to do. And I think she had an awful lot of talent. I think she had a lot of artistic talent that she did not. Maybe if she was really determined, or her life had been different, because she had a difficult childhood in some ways. Maybe if she had pursued it, it would have been different. But women weren't really encouraged to pursue. She went to college, and she actually went to graduate school, and she probably could have fought for her career, but she didn't. It was like, oh, now you're married. Now you're going to raise a family, and you're going to teach Sunday school and do volunteer work. I mean, when I think of the women in my childhood, and a lot of them had a zest for it. They could have been CEOs, a lot of them, but they
Right.
were basically running the church, they were running the town, they were running the school board. They were very talented women who gave of their talents to the community because that was the only outlet that they really had in the 50s and early 60s. That all began to change, but that's how it was.
Well, it's getting kind of weird lately. I'll just mention that where women are not, I saw something where women are just not sticking up for each other. And I just think it's really cool that you're talking about this and then we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
I think,
you know,
yes, and there was a real, that is one thing that I think maybe was, I mean, they didn't have a lot of choices, but they did have a lot of sisterhood with each other, but they didn't talk
yeah,
about it that way, but they were there for each other.
yeah. I think we've lost a lot of that.
Yeah.
Women have become, I'll just mention this because we're talking about it and I saw a clip on the news not too long ago, but I just feel like, women have been almost put it against each other, the jealousy. It's, you don't see the friendship, I think, that maybe you saw a long time ago. What do you think about that?
No, I have to say I feel very lucky. I mean, I grew up in that parish,
Yeah.
which even though, I had my issues with my father, it was interesting to grow up in a parish. I saw my mother have friendships with women, and I've always had friendships with women. And
Mhm.
I also came of age when women were really trying to tell their stories to each other and break isolation, and sisterhood is powerful. And that's been my experience. I think that if you're in the really fierce competitive corporate world where the rules
Yeah.
are more defined by men probably, and you've
Yeah.
got ceilings, and you've got to be twice as good as whoever you're up against, I'm sure that's had an
You're
effect.
right. You're right.
I didn't have to live in,
Yeah.
I was lucky not to have to live in that world, and
Yeah.
the jobs that I've had and the career that I've chosen, there's been a lot of sisterhood that I treasure.
Yeah.
And I hope that all women have that, because, and if you don't seek it, find a way to find it.
That's
Because
cool. Yeah, I have more camaraderie with the spiritual people that I work with now, but being in the real estate industry as a broker for many years, it was just really it got really difficult. Anyway, so
probably ruthless and cutthroat, right?
very much so, very much
Yeah.
so.
That's
So
what I have. I know people in real estate, and it's like, whoa, you're brave. Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah, and
it's
it gets to you after a while. After a while, it's
yeah,
like, it's I'm glad I'm doing this type of work now. But you do what you have to do at the time
that's right.
in order to take care of your family. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was a single mom. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to just say, okay, I'll do what I gotta do.
Women did have to do that after the 50s and early 60s, when it was you could live on one salary, or some people could, a lot more people that now you can't anymore
right. It's
live so
hard.
easily without women in the workforce.
Yeah, no, it's true. I wrote down, you told your mom you wanted to write a novel.
Yeah.
And she answered, I believe you will. And so
She
she was rooting for you.
She was. And yeah, so I really had, there was my parents' marriage, I don't know how much I write about it, maybe a little bit. It was not easy, but I had my father telling me I could not and must not write. And I had my mother saying, you can.
That was
And
a good
thought,
influence. Yeah.
she thought, and she would tell me, oh, your father, I mean, she would not acknowledge her own gifts. And she said, oh, your father's you're like your father, because, she saw him as verbal and able, and she saw herself as not. And it's like, yeah, but she was the one who read the stories. And when I had a migraine headache, she would make up stories for me about my stuffed animals. Just, A.A. Milne had nothing on my mother. She was really good. But she
Oh my
didn't
gosh.
own gifts. She didn't own them. She didn't claim them.
I love it. Well, now
Yeah.
your dad, his original intent was to pursue graduate studies in English literature.
Yeah.
Do you think he kind of, looked at you in a way because he didn't get to pursue his dreams? Do you think that had anything to do
I
with it?
do. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably true. That may have been true. I mean, in my father's lineage, it was all about direct service.
Right.
And so anything that to do with the arts was frippery or indulgence. Like his father wrote, his father wrote light verse, and his father also did some painting, but his father didn't encourage my father to do anything of the sort, because they had to be servants, and they had to feed the hungry, and which was laudable. But my grandfather's plaque says, "I was naked and you clothed me, I was hungry and you gave me to eat." That was their creed. That was what they lived by. And they lived the social justice gospel, and that is very admirable. But what wasn't so great was that they didn't see any other way or acknowledge any other gifts.
They were so tunnel vision on that.
They were very tunnel vision,
That's
and accomplished great things, but there wasn't much room for other ways.
Right. Well, you had I was shocked to read some of your stuff in here about you. You went to school in Vermont. You were supposed to go, from what I understand, you were supposed to go to a certain school, and then you had an accident. Do you want to tell the story?
Oh, well, no, I did have I fell out of a tree just before I went to that school, but I did go to that
Did you
school.
go to that school? Okay.
Yes, I did, and I got kicked out of it, and it was a progressive school, so that was
I know
quite
you got kicked out. What did you do? Tell the audience.
Well, I think there's this story that I included that I didn't want to include, but my publisher wanted me to include, about a very traumatic incident that happened, that I think I shifted from being this real good kid. I couldn't help it. I didn't want to be a good kid, but I was a good kid, and I was good in school. And then there came this point where I just thought, well, I don't have to be good. I don't have to do what anybody says. I don't have to be at the top of my class. I don't have to be the most responsible person. I don't have
How
to
old were you?
do anything. I was about 15 at that time.
Yeah.
But that was partly, and I'm sort of glad they did make me include the traumatic story, because it explains it a little more than just it was simple rebellion. It was sort of like, you might call it soul loss almost.
Yeah.
So I got kicked out.
Yeah. Well, now wait, I want to understand, is that was after you went to London, or was that before you went to London?
Well, after I went to London was when I had the traumatic incident. I got kicked out of that progressive school. Oh, and then you may be thinking of that other school that my father wanted to send me to.
Yes.
Which was
Yes.
horror. It was a horror. and the guy kind of had I think he was rather abusive, but he saw himself as a savior. And so he's the one who said, "Oh, you have to give up everything and follow me." And it's like, no, you're not Jesus. No.
And so you told your dad you weren't going to go to that school.
I did. And they never believed how bad it was, or he didn't, but I just didn't go. I refused to go. And and probably because of my mother, they didn't make
you. Do you want to share what happened with the audience so they can understand what we're...
Okay, so my mother, I was sent to a little progressive school, and it's probably clearer in the book, but I went away for a term off, and I was nearly abducted. I was abducted and nearly raped, and I was only returned, I think, because the person who abducted me decided I must be a nut job, because when I was in London, I decided to pretend I was Eliza Doolittle. So I went into character, and I started speaking with a Cockney accent, and I made up a lot of stories. And this guy, I think, finally figured out I was probably nuts and not safe, because I finally must have said something about I have to meet my uncle back at the Mobil Oil office, because my uncle was working for them. So he returned me, but that was a very scary thing. It was something that I never felt I could tell an adult, and I didn't.
You were what, 15 or 16?
I was 15.
So you go, and I just want to kind of preface this a little bit so the audience understands. You got to go over to England.
Yeah.
To visit, and you went, and your uncle...
My uncle was working at the time.
And your uncle, and I'm just curious, this is the part where I was like, I want to know what your thoughts are. Mm-hmm. Why did he just let you go on your own in London?
I have no idea.
Okay. That was the part that I was like, she's 15 or 16 years old. He just says, he just left you and said, go have a good day and I'll
Just
see you
let-
back
yeah,
here?
he was working. They lived in a little suburb, and he was working. And my aunt was in the hospital at the time having a sinus operation. He
Okay.
didn't know what to do with me. She just thought, well, I'll go to work. I'll give her a map. She can go see, Buckingham Palace and the changing of the guards, and be a tourist. I don't think he realized. Maybe he wasn't imaginative enough to realize how naive I was. That
Right.
I had never been alone in a city in my life. I mean, if I ever went to New York, I was with my mother. I mean, I grew up in a little small town and went to a little hippy dippy school. I'd never been alone in a city. I didn't know anything.
You
And
didn't
so
know not to trust people, and then you
I didn't
sat
know
down
not-
next to this guy and just he started talking to you.
Yep. And I pretended I was Eliza Doolittle, And I made up story and I got in character and I couldn't get out.
And he
And
said, come to my house, and you said, okay. Why did you go with him? Did you
because
think
I didn't know how to break character. It's a good thing I became a novelist, because you get in a lot less trouble that way. But I was a kid. I was a very imaginative, naive kid.
and you
And I
just
didn't know
went?
how to break character. And I had no idea he was going to take me on the underground and take me an hour away from the center of the city. And I was like, I think this is true with people. Maybe not, people aren't that naive anymore, but I think that when you don't have language for what's happening, as verbal as I was, I did not have language for what was happening to me. I didn't know what to do. And then, of course, he got me extremely drunk. In a way, what happened to me isn't that different from kids who, they run away, they end up in the bus station, they don't know what they're doing, they're lost, they're afraid. They're very easy to take advantage of, and that does still go on.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put it in the book, and I agree with your editor or your publisher, because I read that, and it just I think what really got me, and I quote you here, you say no adult ever asked you what happened to you.
No, they didn't. Which
So when you
seemed,
got back, I mean, so did you get back late? Did you get back early?
I got back probably, I don't know what, I was drunk. He dropped me off at the Mobile Oil offices. I guess I had said enough about it that he could figure out
Where
how
to
to put
take you?
taxi and get me there. And my uncle's just sitting there, and he didn't ask me a thing. Like, I think they speculated. I read a letter that my aunt wrote to my
Yeah.
mother and said, I think she's fey, meaning I think she's nuts. I mean, they thought I was really nuts, but they didn't know what to do with me. Well, I guess my parents sent me to a psychiatrist later on, but nobody knew what to do with me. I didn't know what to do with me, but somebody did know what to do with me, because in the next chapter, I went and to the school that my brother went to for kids that had various what we call special ed needs. And I worked there, and the woman who turned into my mother-in-law was great with me. She's like, oh, we'll just find her something to do. We'll accept her as she is. She didn't even use those words, but that's what she did.
That's what
She
she did.
didn't
Well, you
try
were
to
highly intelligent, and they didn't
Yeah.
know what to do with you.
Well, at my mother-in-law's school, she didn't worry about that. It's like, oh, go help that kid with his reading, or we're going to be thinning the stand of trees. You're going to go with the kids, and she didn't even use words. She just put me to work and didn't worry about fixing me or reforming me. She just said, oh, here's another kid who's in trouble, and we can we'll find something for her to do.
Yeah, let you be you. Let you
Yep,
be you.
exactly. That's what
really
she
cool.
did. And that was very, very healing. So it's not that she knew what to do with me, but she just didn't trouble herself about, she didn't think anything had to be done.
She didn't look at you like you needed to be fixed or something was wrong with you.
Exactly. And that was a great, even though, as I note in the book, she was the most a-religious person I ever met. For me, there's a deep spiritual lesson in that, in the kind of radical acceptance she had of the situation as it was, and not pathologizing me, just saying, oh, well, let's see what she's good at. Oh, okay. Let's have her work with this kid.
Cool.
It was very cool. And there were there was another woman, Miss Sang, who was a parishioner of my father's, who really not introduced me in any formal self-conscious sense, but embodied the mystical tradition of Christianity. She just was that. And it's like, oh, that exists.
You talk about Olga and Miss Sang, two
Yep,
women.
and those two women who came into my life when I was 16, they gave me the space to heal, really.
Wow, that's incredible. Now,
Yeah.
did you ever tell the story of what happened to anybody before this? You would have had to have told your husband,
Yeah, I think I probably told friends and
but not a
uh
lot.
I didn't tell I did not tell
Like your
I
mother, your
lived
mom
in a
never knew.
years no. And I did I did sort of use that story as the premise for a novel that I hope is coming out in the next year or so. It's being reissued, called All the Perils of This Night. And the premise was of that novel is, well, what if I hadn't been returned? What if I did that crazy thing of pretending to be Eliza Doolittle and I hadn't been returned? And so that's the basis of the novel. And really looking a lot at how young women, and not just women, boys,
Men too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of craziness. Well, there's a lot of human trafficking, of course, that
There
goes
is.
on right now. And, people are aware. I would like to say that we could do as much as we can about it, but it's hard. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, I think we don't know
There
about.
is.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask really quickly, you never mentioned it to your mom?
No,
No.
no. I mean, I think I mentioned that. I think I said in the book that horrible man who thought he was Jesus, who thought I should sacrifice my will and follow him,
Mm.
had got extracted things from me, not the details, but that I had experiences with drugs and sex. In his mind, drugs and sex. It's like, really? Not really, but he exaggerated it and said it to my parents, but they didn't
Oh,
ever.
yeah.
He he's like, yes, she's involved with drugs and sex. It's like, no, she's really very innocent.
Yes, I saw that. Yes. And he told
Yeah,
them everything. Yes, that's sad. I
yeah,
want to get into the part of your life when you were a Quaker. You were a Quaker for 15 years. And
yeah.
we can't go through the entire book, but I want to hit on
Some
some of the
people could
highlights.
get it and read it. Yes.
Yeah, get it and read it because it's really
Read it.
interesting.
Yeah.
My life as a prayer. It's really, really good, you guys. And it's by Elizabeth Cunningham. I want to just talk about this because you went to a meeting and
Mhm.
tell the audience what happened, if you don't mind. Like
But
how
at the very first meeting I went to that was sort of
yeah, like how you became a Quaker.
well, um, I became oh well, yeah. I tried to stay an Anglican when I moved down to Florida to be with my husband, but that didn't go well. And so I thought, well, but I wanted to be part of a community. I always had been. And I had Quakers on my mother's side. So I looked up a Quaker meeting, and it was a little tiny meeting just in some little room somewhere. And what I loved about Quakers and love about Quakers is that here I was sitting in pews looking up there, but Quakers are sitting in a circle looking at each other. So it says something about where the spirit is, where God is, how we perceive that. But it was a very funny first meeting, as I write about it in the book. There was an elderly man who quoted in Greek. Quakers are Quakers are expected and encouraged to wait on the spirit. And if there's a message, anyone can bring the message through. So
Oh.
apparently every week, this elderly gentleman felt that the spirit wanted him to quote Aeschylus in Greek.
Okay.
He was British, so he would say, I was reading Aeschylus at dawn. And then he would, burst forth in Greek. And there was this little old Southern lady who was a poet, very good poet. And she says, I like the translation. But he was also deaf, so he never heard.
You never heard her.
I think what I loved about that, that was a very eccentric meeting. I went on to be part of, more established, bigger meetings when I moved back to the Northeast. But what I loved was that everybody was just there. They were present, and that they were sharing the silence, and they were sharing the belief that we are all connected.
Yeah, I wrote this down. This really got me in your book. Well, first you said everyone quotes Matthew 25. There is that of God in everyone. And I agree with this. And if you could connect with that part of a person, you had the chance to transform the most volatile situations. And it really made me think about all the war and everything we're having.
Yeah.
And then you talk about when you got married, how you went into the Episcopal church and you had them turn the pews facing each other. And I want you to address this because out of your book, this really, really hit me because we
Mhm.
all have that little piece of God within us. And if we can see that little bit of God, that's what you said. If you can connect with that
Yeah.
part of a person, you have the channel to transform most volatile situations.
So Matthew 25 is about, in the Bible, is about how we see Jesus in the least of these. You remember that passage where Jesus says, I was naked and you clothed me?
Right.
Inasmuch as you have done it unto these, the least of my brethren, you've done it to me. So I think that is the origin of maybe one of the origins of the Quaker belief there is that of God. And it's pretty tough when you really think about if you believe that, whether you're a Christian or not, if you believe there's that of God in everyone, then you can't go around dismissing people and making them other, because there is that of God, or that if you are doing that, you are also doing that to God, and you're doing that to Jesus if you're a Christian. So that was a very, very core tenet of Quaker belief and practice. So the workshops that I that I participated in prison, that was at the core of that, was that we would set up these scenarios where people practiced, instead of having their knee-jerk reaction or their automatic fight or flight reaction, they would find another reaction that would transform the situation. That's what they called it, transforming power.
I love it.
And the Quakers have something that they've created practices called creative response to conflict. And it's gone beyond Quakers. But yeah, we sure need that today, because we're very quick to see the other as other and evil and threatening. And Quakers and Christians, really, if they looked at that passage in Matthew 25, are encouraged to see the other as the vessel of the divine.
Yeah, because if you look at somebody with hate, then you're hating God because they have a piece of God inside of them.
That's right.
But if you change your view and it's changing your energy and changing your view and changing how you look at things, more than anything.
Changing your energy and changing the energy of the dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the war going on over with Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians right now, and it's such a horrible situation. I bring it up because we're talking about this little bit of God in all of us, and it's really a tough situation. You have to defend yourself, but then on the flip side, you've got a lot of innocent women and children and men who are being killed in the process. And I don't have all the answers, but if they could change their view, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's a tough one. You have to protect yourself. So
I found myself the other day during this, I found myself praying for Jesus, because think of how tragic that is for the one we call Jesus, who walked on that land and who knew the conflicts that existed then. Yeah.
To see what's going on right now. Now, do you believe, just since we're talking about it, do you believe that this is prophecy being fulfilled?
I don't think I'm very qualified to speak to that. I think that where I am right now is willing to be with the unknown. I'm willing not to know, and I'm willing to I think there's a real danger in certainty and interpretation on the part of human beings. One of my characters once said, prophecy loses in the translation. That we're translating all the time. We're translating. So to say with any certainty what is happening and why it's happening, I think is a little presumptuous if we believe in God or in the mystery.
Because you never know what he's got.
We really don't know.
Right.
And I think when we try to interpret too much, we're trying to control something, understandably, because we feel like it's out of control. It's scary. It's scary to be out of control. So let me interpret this. Let me try to get a handle on it.
Well, yeah. Well, that's
very human, but I don't think it's helpful.
and I'll just bring up Nostradamus. And I've had a gentleman who would come on the show for a little while, and he talked about it. But he and I just differed so much. To me, it felt dark. I know that sounds odd, but to me, the messages felt dark, and I feel more of a light. I feel like things will work out. In fact, I know they will. And there will be changes, and changes for
Yeah.
the better. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. I like what you said about that. That's
Yeah.
yeah. Talk more about being a Quaker. How did that change you as a person?
Well, I think that um, one of the big changes that led to many other changes was that I had grown up reciting a creed and reciting the same words over and over and over again every week.
Mhm.
And they were they're beautiful words, but very set, very fixed. So in the silence, it's like other things had a chance to emerge. And so one of the things that emerged for me, which we talked about last time, was conceiving of God as feminine as well as masculine. And
Mhm.
actually, some of the Quakers didn't really understand what I was on about when that happened to me, because for them, God didn't have gender. But for me, God, growing up, God the Father, God the Son, God had been so gendered that I needed some room for another image of the divine to
Right.
come.
Right.
And I think I've probably gone on to where it's like, wait, I don't need God to be human anymore. I mean, I don't need to just see God as a human figure anymore. Although that's why I wrote the Maeve Chronicles partly, was because I wanted to see God as not just as something other than human or more than human, but I wanted to see the goddess as human. So I gave Jesus a little friend in the Maeve.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I think
But
there's
yeah,
I think there's a male and a female. I've always felt that way. I felt that way. I can remember going into a Unity church in New Mexico, actually, and hearing them pray to Mother God and Father God. And
mm,
realizing, and this was probably 20 years ago, but realizing then that there was the female aspect, and everybody does what they do. But when I journal, I write to God and Gaia, the goddess, at the same
yeah,
time.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, because I like you, I think there is both. And somehow that got all twisted.
Yeah, or suppressed. Yeah, it's interesting that Julian of Norwich, I've just been reading a novel that I wrote a blurb for by a woman named Kristen Holt Brown. It's called Ordinary Devotion, but she evokes Julian of Norwich in it because it's about anchoresses. And Julian of Norwich, who wrote Divine Love, Revelations of Divine Love, talked about Jesus, our mother. And I love that image of Jesus as someone who can nurture
Yeah.
as well as
Well,
confront, call out,
yeah,
which he.
yeah. I'm going to tell you, well, I don't know. I think a lot of people feel this way. When I was going through a really tough time, I was outside and I felt Jesus's presence, and I knew he was with me because I was so distraught, and I won't get into it, but I knew that Jesus was with me. And there's a lot of people today that are saying, oh, Jesus was just a myth, or Jesus isn't real. It was just a story. But no, I want to say that definitely it's a energy, an entity, a loving energy that comforted me when I needed comforting. Have you ever experienced that
Oh,
yourself?
yes. I don't know if you got to that chapter, but yeah.
Talk about it. Talk about that.
Well, I feel like, well, when I talk about Jesus and my experience of Jesus, I'm not talking about a theology or a creed or any belief that anybody else has to have. But I feel there's certain times of night when I wake up and I feel like I'm in the presence. And sometimes it takes his form. Sometimes it's just the presence. But I remember I have these conversations and I said to him, look, I don't know why you're here with me. I mean, there's so many other problems in the world. There's so many other people that are suffering. I mean, there's wars here, there's starving. And what he said to me was, I am the heart of the heart. That's where I live. So you never have to worry that if I'm with you, I'm not with someone else, because I am the heart of the heart. Sometimes a heart locks me out, sometimes a heart locks me in, but I live in the heart, so I can always be with you.
Mhm. Just like our loved ones
Yeah.
who have
Yeah.
passed, we always have that love in our heart. And Jesus told you
And
that.
that's what he
How
is. To me, he's the heart of the heart. Like I've got a heart, but he's the heart of the heart.
is the heart of the
That's
heart.
who,
How
that's how,
comforting.
by him. And to me, it's like, that doesn't mean that I have to be a creed saying, I don't have to say the creed. I don't have to believe this or that. I don't have to insist that anybody else believe what I believe. But I know, like you said, I know what I know in terms of that I have, that it's real.
Mhm. I think
Whatever.
that's, yeah, it's real. It's real. And that's the biggest thing. And I'm so glad we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Because I think people are trying to get rid of Jesus and get rid of God. And we got to bring him
Or
back.
they're trying to put him in a box and saying he's, you the way you understand him, or if you don't understand him, then you're somehow outcast. And to me, that is simply not true.
Or to act like he didn't exist, that he was just a fairy tale or a story. Speaking of fairies.
I just want to do a C.S. Lewis number here, because I grew up on C.S. Lewis, and who
Okay. All right.
was a Christian convert. But one of the things that I always loved and appreciated about him is that he had people in his stories that were of another religion. And his views were a little racist, but he did have one of the people that other people considered enemies seeking, the God that he believed in. And then he was welcomed and accepted by Aslan, who is Jesus. And it's like, well, why would you accept me? And it goes back to Matthew 25. Well, you were kind, you helped people, you were honest, you were truthful. So all of that you are is accounted onto whatever we think God is. So even if someone doesn't believe in Jesus, even if they're an atheist, if they are that kind of a person, God knows.
Sure, he knows every one of us.
Yep. And that yeah, Christians don't, God knows, they don't own righteousness.
Yeah.
And when Jesus was tough on people, he tended to be tough on the self-righteous.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I always think about him throwing the money in the
Yeah. And when he went on a rant, he'd say, "Oh, you whited sepulchres, you hypocrites." I mean, the people that he asked were the people who thought they were so good and they were so righteous and everybody admired them and God liked them best. No, Jesus had very little tolerance for that. And he would also embrace people that were outside of his own religion. That's what the story of the Good Samaritan is about. The Samaritans were the enemies at the time.
Interesting, isn't it? I love it. I'm so glad you came on to talk about this today. Let's we only have a few more minutes before we need to get out of here. We could talk for a long time. There are two parts to the book. Part 2 is A Way Out of No Way. Within that, you do talk about the angels, the fairies, and the divas, and you ask for their help. I wonder if you tell the story, maybe you could leave us with this, that when you were in the woods and they cleared a path for you. I wonder if you would tell that. Okay.
Well, I think that I do every day. I say thank you to them. Yes, I had a friend who said, here's, you should read this book about angels. She said, they want to help, but you have to ask. So I thought, well, maybe I should ask. So I started asking. And I think what I realized, and I consider them to be angels, but I think the way they would work is they would shift my perception. Like on my own, I'd be like, I started by asking for things that I had lost. Where is that? You know how frantic we get and we pull the house apart. So I just asked for help, and I'd be calm. They'd calm me and they'd direct my gaze. And sometimes it doesn't happen right away. And I say, okay, I can be patient. But that was it. When I was in the woods, I was in a thicket. There was water, there was swamp on one side, a steep hill on the other, and briars everywhere. And I wanted to walk there because I wanted to be near the stream, but I was not I could have turned around and gone back. So it wasn't like I was lost, but I was like, I wonder if I just wait and ask for help. If
they'll give it to you.
They can show me the way, just the way they show me where my keys are. So I stood there and my perception shifted. And I'd say, oh, I could take 2 steps in that direction. So I'd go take the 2 steps and then I'd wait. And I'd say, okay, I'm waiting. And then I'd see another 2 steps. And for me, that's sort of like, that's how they work. But it's also maybe what we need to learn to do at this time is to not think that we know everything and control everything. To be willing to say, I need help. I need to see a way. I'm going to stand here and be patient and be still and know that I am God. You know that phrase from the Bible.
Mhm.
So I think what the angels, fairies, and divas taught me is to be still and to trust, and way will open. And I forget all the time, but when I remember that,
No, you're absolutely true. I relaunched my book, Wake Up, the Universe is Speaking to You. And in here, I tell the story. I had gotten into Detroit Airport real late one night. I was by myself. I was on I-75 and there was construction and it was raining. And
Mm,
I got myself all turned around and I was freaked out and I just stopped and I said, all right, you guys, I need your help right now. And it's like you said, and I write about this because all of a sudden I saw, oh, I'm supposed to go this way and follow the detour
mm,
this way. And I did, and I got out and I made it. But
yeah,
a lot of times we just, we forget to ask.
we forget to ask.
We forget
Yeah.
to ask. And the same thing goes for when you're talking about finding items. I do that all the time. I'm like, ask my angel, where is that? And she'll tell me. And I'm like, it can't be. And then it always is.
It's amazing.
It's
It's a,
amazing.
and it's little, but it's big, you
It's
know?
very big because, like you said, you were out, you were by yourself, you're in the woods, you don't know which way to go. And, you were like, show me the way. And they do. And when they do, it's like a miracle.
If it does feel, it is, and it is. And I wish that as a collective group I wish as humanity, we would pause sometimes and say, you know what? This situation is a mess. I don't know which way to go. Instead
Yeah.
of thinking we do. If we would just wait, way might open, who knows, in all kinds of conflicts. It might.
Yeah, I like how you talk so much. And I want to mention this really quickly, how the Quakers quiet their mind. And
Mm.
that to me, I feel like really helped you. And it's hard, to quiet
And
your
it's not easy. It's not
Yeah.
easy. Yeah.
When you do, you get that message or you look at things differently. And
Yeah.
like you were just speaking of, you get that, oh, the answer to that question that you were looking for. Or
Mhm.
whatever. All right, we got to get out of here for today, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you want to leave us with? What do you want to leave us with today?
I like the phrase "way will open," which is a Quaker phrase. And I think that's what we've just been talking about with the angels, fairies, what I call the angels. And I like and the other phrase, "a way out of no way," comes from gospel music, which I love. And so I guess I guess I'm trying to learn and relearn how to trust that that way will open. And that I don't have to know everything.
Yeah, it takes
Yeah.
faith. It takes
It
belief. Yeah.
does, and it doesn't, and it's faith, like I say, not necessarily in an organized religion or a creed. It's kind of faith in the mystery.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
universal powers that be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's a practice. It's not a once and for all. It's a practice.
it's a practice. It absolutely is. And I just want to say that, a lot of people have a problem with saying God, and they want to say spirit, but it doesn't matter. It's that energy, it's that love energy, that is that vibration that we can connect with, that we
And people can
lost our,
find the word. Yeah.
yeah, I think we lost our connection with that. And that's really important. I'm so glad you wrote this. My Life as a Prayer, Elizabeth Cunningham. You guys have to pick this up. It's really interesting. What a life you've had, lady.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. And thank you for having me back on. And it's a pleasure to talk to you.
It's a pleasure
And
to
blessings on your work, which sounds very exciting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you guys, you're going to have to come and meet me. Check out my website, nancyyearout.com. On there, you can read messages from Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, that I've been channeling. You can also find out that I'll be at the Conscious Life Expo 2024 at the Hilton LAX. And that will be February 9th through the 12th. And I'll be talking about angel communications, teaching people how to connect with their guardian angel. And then I will be at Boca Deerfield Beach, Florida at the New Life Expo 2024, March 16th and 17th. All right, you guys, we're going to get out of here for today, but I want to thank everyone for supporting us and watching. Everyone take care and God bless.
Hold your head high, the world is coming. Watch the colors lift your soul. let's hit the high road.